Hello everyone, welcome back to the new video. So here before starting writing any code, first let's have a look to our Unsplash API. So this is the website we can get access to the documentation of this Unsplash API. So here you can create your account. So I have already created my account. So here first thing we need to register our application here. So let's create a new application and we need to accept these guidelines. You can read these guidelines here and the term and conditions also. So let's name our application Image Vista. And now let's create this. So here right now this application is in the demo. We can just make 50 requests per hours, but for learning purpose this is quite enough, and we can also apply for this production API. And now let's go to the documentation of this API. Let's scroll down. So in this API we will get access to the three endpoints. First one will be this list photos. Here we will get the photos from the editorial feed with this endpoint. And next we have this get a photo. Here we can retrieve a single photo by providing the ID of that photo. And next we will use this endpoint search photos. So here we need to provide this query. Now let's go through few terms which we used in the development of an application. So first one we have server. A server is a computer or system that provides resources, data, services or programs to other computers, known as clients over a network. In our case, Unsplash has computers at certain location where they store all the images. Next term we have this API. It stands for Application Programming Interface. An API is a set of rules and protocols for building and interacting with software applications. It allows different software systems to communicate with each other. For example, Unsplash provides a set of rules known as Unsplash API to interact with their server. If we want to retrieve a particular image, we need to send a specific query to their server. Next, we have client. A client is a device or application that accesses services and resources provided by a server. In this case, our Android app Image Vista acts as the client, requesting data from the server and displaying it to the user. Now let's talk about the role of retrofit library in all of this. Before that, let's quickly recap the role of an API. An API provides a set of rules that allows our app to communicate with a server, request data and receives response. Now the retrofit library simplifies this process. Retrofit is a type-safe HTTP client for Android that makes it easy to interact with APIs. It helps our app to send network requests to a server, handle responses, and parse the data into usable objects. Retrofit takes care of the networking task so we can focus on what to do with the data. Now to get more clarity on all of this, take a look of a common analogy of a restaurant. Think of a server as the kitchen in a restaurant. The kitchen prepares and stores all the food that customers order. An API is like the restaurant menu. The menu lists all the dishes available along with instructions on how to order them. And the client is like a customer in a restaurant. The customer looks at the menu, places an order, then receives the food prepared by the kitchen. And here retrofit is like the waiter in a restaurant. The waiter takes your order from the menu, brings it to the kitchen and then delivers the prepared dish back to you. The waiter ensures that your order is correctly placed and the right food is delivered, making the whole process smooth and efficient. Now enough talking, let's write some code. So here first thing, let's rename this package to presentation. Next thing, let's create one more package here in this image vista package with the name data. And here let's create one more package with the name remote. And here let's create one file with the name Unsplash API service. So this will be a interface. So first we will write a function to get the editorial feed images. So here first let's use this suspend modifier. The name will be get editorial feed images. And the return type we will use as the string. So how we can get those editorial images? Let's go back to our Unsplash API. So here we can see we need to make a get request with this endpoint. So let's go back, and here let's use get annotation with this endpoint. And here we can see this get annotation is coming from this retrofit library. Apart from this get annotation, we also need to use one more annotation. Let's go back to our API. So here let's go to this public authentication. So here we can see we also need to authenticate our request. This is because the Unsplash API should know that the person who is making the request to their server is a authorized person or not. Does he have a genuine access key or not? So here what we need to do, we need to use a header where we need to provide this string with our access key. So where is this access key? First let's copy this part, and here we have this header annotation, and we can also see this headers annotation is also coming from this retrofit library. So here let's provide this string, but we need to provide our access key. So here when we go to this your app, and we have this image Vista app, and let's scroll down. So this is our access key. So let's copy this and create a new package with the name util, and here let's create a new file with the name constants. Right now we are keeping this in this constant file, but in the future videos we will keep this API key at a secure place. So for now let's just use this constant here and import this. Next thing, let's go to this image Vista package, and here let's create one more package with the name di, and here a new object with the name app module. So here in this app module object we will create the object of this Unsplash API service. So for that first we need to create the object of that retrofit. So to create retrofit object we have this retrofit builder pattern. So here we have this builder. Next thing, let's add converter factory. So for now let's use this scalar converter factory. And next thing we need to provide base URL. So for the base URL let's again create an object in our constant file. So this is our base URL. It is generally the website where API have been hosted. So let's use this constant here. And next thing we have this dot build function. Now let's create the object of our retrofit service. Like this. Now in our presentation package, here let's first create a package with the name home screen. So here we will keep our home screen composable function. So here for simplicity let's just use a column with this fill max size modifier. Let's also use this vertical scroll, and here let's just provide this remember scroll state. So with this vertical scroll modifier, our column will be scrollable. Here we will just use a text composable. Now to keep these images, we need to use a view model. So here let's create one more file with the name home view model. Let's also extend it to the view model class. So this view model class is coming from this Android lifecycle. So first thing, what is this view model? A view model is a component of the Android architecture that is designed to manage UI related data in a lifecycle conscious way. It stores and manages UI related data so the data survives configuration changes like screen rotation and changing from light mode to dark mode or vice versa. So here let's create a value with the name images and it will be of type string, and let's use this mutable state of, and here let's create a function with the name get images. So here we will use this view model scope dot launch. Now we can call our function which we created in that API service. So here we need to use this where, and here we will call this init block and let's call this get images. We are using this init blocks because in our UI there is no button to call this get images function. So this init block will automatically call this get images function whenever this home view model will be created. So let's minimize these imports and go to our main activity. So here we will use our home screen. We need to provide the images and we will get those images from the state we created in the view model. So first we need to access the view model. So here let's use this view model and the type let's use that home view model, and let's open these imports and we can see we have this import which will help us in accessing that view model. So here let's just use this view model dot images. Now let's run our app and see how our app is working. So it has been crashed. So let's go to our logcat. I think it is because of that internet permission. So here manifest file, we need to add the internet permission because our app is accessing the internet. Now let's run it again. So here we can see the data. First let's change it to the light mode. So this is the data that API is providing. We are getting all the data from that API. This data is not useful for us. This is because we are just getting the string of all the data from this endpoint. Next thing, we will look into how we can get the useful data only and how we can process that data to display in our phone. So for that, let's minimize this and close these files. Now before moving forward, let's get aware of some more terminologies. The Unsplash server stores data in a specific format, but this format isn't always suitable for transmission over the internet. To address this, Unsplash uses the JSON format for data transmission. This is where serialization comes into play. Serialization is the process of converting an object into a format that can be easily stored or transmitted. Common formats include byte streams, JSON and XML. The primary goal of serialization is to save the state of an object so it can be recreated later. Now we receive JSON data through the API, but our app needs to use this data in a specific format. To achieve this, we need to convert the JSON data into our app's format. This is where deserialization comes into play. Deserialization is the reverse process of serialization. It involves converting the serialized format such as byte stream, JSON or XML back into a usable object. This allows the stored or transmitted data to be reconstructed into its original state. Think of serialization and deserialization like packing and unpacking a suitcase. When you serialize an object, it's like packing item into a suitcase. Each item is carefully organized and placed so it can be transported or stored. When you deserialize, it's like unpacking the suitcase. You take each items out and place it back where it belongs, restoring it to its original state. To handle the process of converting JSON data into a format our app can use, we will utilize KotlinxSerialization. KotlinxSerialization is a powerful and flexible library for Kotlin that allows for straightforward serialization and deserialization of objects. It supports various formats including JSON, making it an excellent choice for working with API data. Now when we look our Unsplash API, let's go to this list photos. So here we are using this endpoint to get the editorial feed, and the response we will get will be this JSON response. And how we read this JSON file? These square brackets denotes that there are list of objects in these square brackets. Next we have this curly braces. So this is a single object, and in this single object there is a field ID and there is a field created at, updated at, width, height. These are the fields. And after these fields there is also a user object, and these are the fields of that user object. So next we need to define a object in our application. So for this there are two ways. So first thing, here in our remote package, let's create one more package with the name DTO. DTO stands for Data Transfer Object. It's a naming convention. When we get the data from the server, we name it in the DTO. So here let's create our Unsplash image object. So we can create a new data class. Now let's see what are the fields we need to keep. So here we need to keep the ID field created at, updated at. We can create these fields like this, but this is not a smarter way to create all these fields. For this we have a plugin. So what's the name of that plugin? Here when you press right click on this and on this new, we have this Kotlin data class file from JSON. So this plugin will take the JSON file and it will create a Kotlin data class file. So we don't need to create manually each fields. If you don't have this plugin, you can simply go to that settings and you will find a tab with the name plugin. You can search this plugin from here. For now, let's delete this file. We will generate this file with the help of that plugin. So here we just need to copy this JSON data, and here let's use this plugin, and here let's paste that data. And now we need to name the data class file, and let's press generate. So it has generated these 8 files. First let's look this file. This file is just saying that it is an array of Unsplash DTO item. So we don't need to keep this. We can delete this file. And next we have this. First thing, let's rename it to simply Unsplash image DTO. So it has created all those fields which we were creating by manually. So first thing we need to tell the KotlinxSerialization that this data class we will use to deserialize that JSON data into our usable object. So for that here we need to annotate this data class with the serialization annotation. Here we can also see that this serialization annotation is coming from that KotlinxSerialization library. Next thing, we will only keep those fields which we will use in our project, and we can delete all the fields which we don't use. So we are not going to use this blur hash, so let's delete this field, and also this colors created at this description we will use, but sometimes this description can be null, so let's use this nullable string type. And we have this height id liked by user, we are not going to use this field, and also likes and links, and this updated is at. And let's move it to the first line, and these height and width at one place, and this user collection also let's delete this. And next these two fields are giving error, so here let's press Ctrl B on URL. Let's move this data class into our this file, and also let's annotate this with serialization annotation, and we can delete this file. Next let's go to this user, and first thing we need to annotate this with serialization annotation, and we are also going to use few fields in this user, so let's delete the unnecessary fields. Here next thing, this profile image field is giving error, so it is saying that this property name should not contain underscore, because there is a convention in the Kotlin language that we don't use underscore for defining the properties. So what we are going to use, here we will use that serial name annotation. So this serial name annotation is also coming from that serialization library. So here what's the use of this? Now with the help of this serial name, it knows that JSON file has the field with this name and we are using the field with this name. Let's go to this profile image and copy this data class and paste it here and annotate it with serialization. And here also we only going to use this small. And next let's go to this user links and copy this part and paste it here and rename this data class with the name user links. Let's also rename this data class with DTO. Next we have this file. We don't need these data, so let's delete this file also. Also this file. And let's rename this to user DTO. Now we have these two files where we have specified all the fields which this KotlinxSerialization will use to deserialize that JSON data into our usable object. Next thing, let's go to our Unsplash API service, and here we will get not only the string, we will get the list of Unsplash image DTO. And now we need to update our converter factory to KotlinxSerialization. For that, here we are creating that retrofit object, and earlier we were using that scalar converters factory because we are just getting that JSON data into a string. Now we are getting a whole object. So here we will use the KotlinX serialization. So first thing, let's create a JSON object, and here we need to specify that ignore unknown keys to true. So what this means, because we have deleted some of the unnecessary fields, so it will ignore those fields when it will deserialize that object into our app. So here instead of this we will use this JSON dot s converter factory, and here we need to specify the content type, and content type we have the JSON file. So this is how we specify the content type, and let's use that content type here. Now let's close this file and go to our home screen. So here this time we will get the list of Unsplash image TTO. So we will use this images dot for each. So here let's just use this text composable function with some of the fields from this image. Next thing, we will keep these images state in our view model. So here instead of this string state, let's create list of photos. And here we can keep the default value as the empty list. And we have used this private set modifier because we only need to change this field inside this view model. Other than this view model, we are only going to read the value, not write. So here now we are updating this list of images, and in our main activity, here we are passing these images from the view model to our home screen. Now let's run our app and see how it is looking. So here we have our data. So this is not looking much good. Let's just give some styling so we can read some data. So for that, let's minimize this and go back to our home screen. After every image, let's use a horizontal divider. So this divider is simply a thin line, and this username, let's use the bold letters, and this URL, let's use the different color. Now let's run our app again and see. So here we have the data of the image list of images. So this is the data we are getting from that JSON file to our app. Next, let's minimize this and this also. Here one thing is that we are using these Unsplash image object in the way has been defined in the server. But in our app, we will define this object in our own way. So for that, here in our image Vista package, let's create one more package with the name domain. And in this domain, let's create one more package with the name model. And here we will define a Unsplash image data class in the way we are going to use in our app. So this is how we are going to use this Unsplash image model. So we are going to use this model in our home screen. So instead of this, let's use this Unsplash image. Now we are going to use these fields from this. And now let's go back to our home view model. So here we will keep the list of these Unsplash images. So here it is giving error. So this error is because we are providing the list of Unsplash image TTO, but we need to require this Unsplash image. So here we need to create a mapper file where we will convert the Unsplash image TTO data class to the Unsplash image. So here in our data package, let's create one more package with the name mapper. Here we can create a file with the name mappers. So here we will create an extension function on this Unsplash image DTO data class and name it to domain model, and it will return us to this Unsplash image. So here in this Unsplash image we have these fields ID will be this dot id. Whatever will be the id in the DTO, we will save into this id. And next we have this image URL small, and this field we are going to map with this dot URLs dot small like this. And in the similar way, these fields also. So this is how we are going to map these fields from the DTO class to this Unsplash image. Next thing, let's create a mapper for a whole list. So this function we are going to use, we have created the extension function on this list of Unsplash image DTO with this name, and it will return us this list of Unsplash images. So here we are just simply map each items from this list to the domain model with the help of this mapper. So here in our view model, we can just simply use that extension function to domain model list. Now it is mapping this DTO to the domain model, and we are using that in our home screen. So now we can run our app. So here we can see our app is running perfectly fine. So this is all for this video, and in the next video we are going to design this home screen, and we will also look into the usage of that Coil library and the lazy layouts. And if you found these videos helpful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.